In today's episode, you'll learn if it's possible to find out how many podcast subscribers you have. Welcome to Podcasting Q&A, where you learn the best tips and strategies to launch, grow, and monetize your podcast. This week's question comes from Felice.
Hi, this is Felice from Action Packed Travel in the UK. I love your great stats and I look at them all the time. It's great knowing how many listeners I have and how many countries that's in, but I can't actually find out how many subscribers I have, how many regular listeners. Is there any way of finding out? Thanks.
Thanks for your question, Felice. Now, different podcast directories have different ways of measuring subscribers, and unfortunately, it's difficult, if not impossible, to figure out what those numbers are. The truth is, there's a better way to measure audience growth and engagement. So in this episode, I'm going to talk about a few different places where you can look at your data, why it's not always accurate, and a better way to measure audience growth and engagement instead. Like I mentioned earlier, podcast directories have data, but it's not directly tied to subscribers. So it's really hard to tell whether those numbers are accurate or not. Take a look at Spotify, for example. Now, their numbers are super inflated, and you'll only find out the number of followers you have, not necessarily the people who have subscribed or even listened to your show. And if you don't believe me, take a look at the disparity between the number of follows you have and the number of listens you have for each episode, and you'll see what I mean. Then we have Apple Podcasts, which shows you the number of listeners and the number of engaged listeners. Now, the number of listeners is how many people have listened to your show, and the number of engaged listeners is how long people listened to each episode. Again, not really helpful for understanding how many subscribers you have for your podcast. And then we have Google Podcasts. Like Spotify, their numbers are pretty inflated. They do show the number of subscribers that you have, but if you compare the number of subscribers to the number of listens you have for each episode, they don't really seem to match up. And that's just the data that you have access to. There are plenty more places where your listeners can listen to podcasts, but you're not privy to any of that information. And even if you do have access to the data, it's all really confusing. So instead of measuring the number of subscribers you have, you want to measure the number of downloads you have for your show. More specifically, you want to do so within a time frame such as 7, 30, or even 90 days. Doing that gives you a more accurate representation of how large your audience is for your show. Now, if you host with Buzzsprout, you should be able to find out those numbers by clicking on the Stats tab, and you can even filter out the number of downloads you get within 7, 30, or even 90 days. And if you want to find out how your podcast compares to other Buzzsprout podcasts, head to Buzzsprout's global stats page and check out how many downloads you need to be in the top 50% of podcasts. Now I'm going to turn the question on to you. How do you measure audience growth? Leave a comment down below. I'd love to find out. And if you want to dig even deeper into your stats, we have a video going through all of Buzzsprout's advanced stats so you can take a look at it and see other ways that you can measure audience growth. If you want to check out that video, go ahead and click on the link in the show notes or right here. Thanks for watching today's video, and as always, keep podcasting.